Sarah and I took some vacation for about a week and a half. We hit the road and went up to visit family and friends in Colorado. And we stopped off in Amarillo and hung out with some of Sarah's side of the family. And then spent the rest of the time outside of Estes Park at a cabin up there with family and had a wonderful time. I want you to take a minute to watch this clip that I filmed the day that we did the production for a few podcast episodes, kind of a proof of concept, but take a couple minutes and watch this video.
Red Letter Basics exists to help people know and listen to Jesus. The videos that we just produced here on this set are the first of many to come of digital resources. We have a few videos that are kind of a proof of concept for doing a hero podcast that will cover a series of key questions and issues when we want to know Jesus and listen to him more. There are 135 topics in this book. We want to produce a video, at least one video, for each of these topics. We have a whole strategy of how we're going to move forward with that. And it's going to follow print resources and workbooks that are going to be kind of strategized together to be made available at the same time. So we'll be able to take the videos in batches. And financially, that's going to make it a lot more approachable. Right now, we're able to produce these videos for X amount of dollars right here, and we're able to get this quality right here. And we want to bring the quality up and always do better than we did before. So that means that we're going to have to continue to raise more funds in order to continue to produce more digital content, to continue to help other people know and listen to Jesus. So I want to invite you to partner with us in that. And there's going to be more information coming out on how to actually do that and how to help get behind more production of these videos. I'm filming this the day of when we just did all the other videos with Matthew, Tingblad, and Nick also. And so there's a lot that we still have to figure out. I just want to say thank you to the ministry team, as many of you have been praying behind the scenes, pun intended, for this kind of mini production in our living room. And for the people who have financially partnered with us to help create the budget for this shoot, to be able to have Matthew and Nick over here, to be able to get Preston and Jesse out here, to be able to film this and produce it. And thank you to everyone who let us borrow their camera equipment. And it's just been such a humbling experience. So big thank you to that. There's going to be, like I said, a lot more information coming out on how we're going to continue forward with producing more content. And right now, I want you guys to be in prayer for that and to start considering financially what you might be able to do so that you can be ready to go when we get there.
We were able to film 5 videos and they look so good. Preston and Jesse have been doing such an incredible job editing those videos. They're almost done. Whenever they get finished, I'm going to post them for everyone to see. That way you can get a little bit of an idea for the type of content that we want to produce moving forward. Some of the strategy with releasing the book is going to be revolving around this content. First, we're going to create videos based on workbooks that we have, and then release the workbooks as those videos are done. So the first one that we're going to work towards is, what does Jesus say about the gospel? It's going to take a topical approach about what the gospel is, and covering, I think there's 7 topics in that workbook, and we're going to have a video for each one, and I want to try to get those done by the end of this year. So that's one of the main projects we're going to be fundraising for, as well as different like printing costs for the book so that we can have a back stock and other shipping and handling type things, some better filming equipment that we can use, and all sorts of things like that. But so I'm still working through a little bit more of the budget to figure out exactly what it's going to cost in order to get this accomplished. But right now it's going to be between $10,000 to $20,000. They're going to be closer to that $20,000 range for being able to do everything that we want to accomplish. But we'll see how that goes. And again, the Lord provided what was needed for these videos, and they are turning out amazing. I thought it was going to cost $6,000, and the Lord provided about $3,000, and we were able to produce some great content with it. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to keep you guys in the loop for that. This month, August, is dedicated to finishing the edits on the book and getting ready to do the final prints on them. So be praying for me as I work through the theological team's edits and feedback. And then also many of you, the ministry partners, have been providing me with a lot of feedback on the book. People that I'm discipling and using the book for the content of our Bible studies have been giving me a lot of feedback. I got to process all the information now. So that's what this month is all about. I love you all. And always remember what God is doing in your life and through your life.
So why are the words of Jesus important? I think this is a question that is kind of a central issue with Red Letter Basics, because it's the very principle of starting with the words of Jesus. So the three areas that kind of come to my mind with it is the authority of scriptures, right? Are the words of Jesus more important than the rest of Scripture? Or does he have authority over the other scriptures? Like what's going on there? The second thing that comes to my mind is Jesus being the Son of God and fulfilling the law and the prophets. Like, why does that matter for what Jesus has to say? And the third area that comes to my mind is, how did Jesus deal with complicated issues? Because when I read the scriptures, I see him simplifying complex and complicated issues. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on each of those.
The Son of God. I mean, he is God. He's the one who wrote the scriptures to begin with, because he's the author of scriptures. So I think that it makes those words just eminently important. It's interesting, however, you talked about the authority of scripture and how that, when you mentioned that, it occurred to me immediately how there are denominations that emphasize certain parts of the scriptures more than others. I mean, the Catholics, when you go to a mass, the main part of the mass is reading of the Gospels, reading. And the fact that, you have a reading from the Old Testament, you have a reading from the rest of the New Testament, but really it's the reading of the Gospels that's important. So they've made that kind of very explicit. But then there's the Jewish people who don't believe in the New Testament or Jesus, but they say the Torah is the imminent part of the scripture.
Right.
So it's interesting to me that we have, different religions making different parts of it important.
And then a lot of evangelicals would make like Paul's letters super important, right? Like half the sermons that might be preached might be of Paul's letter.
Well, I would say more than that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's a really remarkable thing, first off, to think about how God himself became flesh and lived among us and spoke among us. You have that moment when at the transfiguration of Jesus, and God says, "Hey, this is my son, listen to him." Like, of all the things that God could say, the voice of God from heaven speaks forth an audible voice, and he says, "Listen to this guy."
Yeah.
And he's pointing to Jesus, and it makes sense in many ways, because Jesus is God. He is fully and completely God in every kind of way. And so when he speaks, God speaks. Jesus makes this very clear about his divinity throughout the Gospels, and especially the Gospel of John, kind of near the end. But that's a really important thing. Now, kind of like what you mentioned, there is a confusion as to what that means when we look at the words of Jesus in comparison with the rest of Scripture. Because even the way kind of the idea of red letter, like some people might see the red letters and be like, oh, these are more important or more biblical or more divine than the rest of Scripture. That is not Christian theology at all. And some people will mistake that and start teaching those things, but that is wrong. What is significant about Jesus is that when we're looking particularly at the whole of the New Testament text, we understand that Jesus was what he did and what he said was very foundational.
You might even say the cornerstone.
To what came after, right? And so Paul and Peter and others are looking back to the life, ministry, death, resurrection of Jesus as they speak.
Yeah.
And so this doesn't mean that Jesus's words are necessarily like more authoritative as scripture, but they do have a foundational role where the way that we make sense of the New Testament is by looking back at how this was built up from what Jesus did. So if we're going to start somewhere, start with Jesus.
Right.